She rejected his love. He went to a shaman. Now, something is haunting her. It looks like him. It calls her name at night. But it's not Jaya anymore. It's something darker, something that was born from his broken heart and bound by a curse. When love turns into a ritual, there's no such thing as goodbye. The wind carried the scent of burnt incense as dusk fell upon the quiet village. Crickets sang in the distance, their rhythm broken only by the occasional bark of a restless dog. Life moved slowly in this corner of the world until love began to rot in someone's heart. Jaya had always watched Ningrum from afar ever since childhood. She was the light he could never reach. As years passed, that admiration turned into obsession, and when he finally confessed his feelings beneath the swaying coconut trees beside her home, he did so with trembling hands and burning eyes. But Ningrum, she smiled kindly, softly, almost like she pitied him. "I'm sorry, Jaya. I don't feel the same," she said, her voice as calm as the sky before a storm. "You're a good man, but my heart belongs elsewhere." Her words were gentle, but in Jaya's ears, they struck like thunder. The silence after her rejection was louder than any scream. For days, he didn't leave his room. He ignored his mother's calls, his friends' concerns, and the world around him. The image of Ningrum's smile replayed endlessly in his mind like a curse, not a memory. Something inside him began to wither. Then, one night, as the village slept under a blanket of stars, Jaya rose from his bed. He walked past the fields, through the thin jungle, and into a hidden trail only a few dared to speak of. The path led to an old wooden hut no one visited anymore. It was said to be cursed. Some even claimed it moved places when no one was looking. Inside lived an old man known as Rexo. He was not a healer. He was not a priest. He was a man who traded in the unseen, a collector of promises and spirits alike. Jaya stood at the doorway, hesitating as the lantern inside flickered with an unnatural hue. "I want her to love me," he said once the door creaked open. Rexo didn't speak. He simply stared at the boy with eyes that had seen too much. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Love," he whispered, "is the easiest thing to summon, but the hardest thing to control." Jaya stepped in, unaware that he was already too far gone. Crossing the threshold felt like stepping out of the living world. The moment Jaya entered, the air thickened, as if the walls held their breath. A musty scent clung to his skin, burnt herbs, dried blood, something metallic. The hut was smaller than it looked from the outside. Its wooden walls were nearly black with age and smoke, and symbols lined every surface scratched into the grain, drawn with dark pigments, pulsing faintly in the candlelight. In the corner stood an altar, low, rotting, and crowded with strange items, animal skulls, wilted flowers, a locked box covered in red cloth. Rexo stood silently near the altar. His presence felt too large for his frame. Every movement he made was slow but deliberate, like someone who had seen time bend. Jaya tried to speak, but no words came. The shaman finally broke the silence to change the path of someone's heart. He said quietly, "You must first let go of your own." His voice carried a calm threat. There was no smile on his face, no pity, no warning, only certainty. Jaya looked down at his hands. He wasn't sure what he was about to give, or what he would become after this, but he knew that the ache inside him wouldn't fade on its own. He reached into his pocket and held out the only thing that mattered, Ningrum's old handkerchief, folded carefully, still carrying the soft scent of hibiscus. Rexo took it without a word and placed it in a clay bowl filled with thick, dark water. The surface rippled unnaturally. Then it began to whisper. A voice rose from the bowl, not loud, not clear, but chilling, a wet voice, muffled and raw. It said her name. Jaya's knees nearly buckled. Ningrum. Again, the voice called out, this time closer, more familiar, like she was there in the room, under the floor, behind the walls. The candlelight dimmed. Rexo placed one bony hand on Jaya's forehead. His touch was cold, like touching stone left out under rain. "You'll have what you want," he said, "but you must not touch her, not with love, not with longing. Let the spirit act for you." Jaya nodded slowly. Though his mind was spinning, he didn't understand the rules. He only knew the ache in his chest and the promise of its end, far from the hot. In a quiet room lit only by moonlight, Ningrum stirred in her sleep. Her body felt heavy, like someone was watching her. She sat up. Something had shifted in the air. Outside her window, the trees didn't move. Not a single leaf danced. Yet she felt the wind, cold, stale, breathing against the glass. And then, barely a whisper, just behind her ear, someone said her name. Ningrum froze. She didn't turn, couldn't. Every instinct screamed to stay still, as if moving would confirm that someone was truly there behind her. Her room, once a place of warmth and quiet routine, now felt hollow, the kind of emptiness that comes not from absence, but from the presence of something that should not be. Her breath fogged the glass as she slowly stood and reached for the curtain. Outside, the coconut trees stood tall and unmoving, silhouettes under a pale moon. But her reflection on the glass, something was wrong. It didn't mimic her movements. The moment her hand twitched, the reflection smiled. She stepped back, heart pounding. But before she could scream, the reflection returned to normal. Her face, her eyes, her fear, alone again. She didn't sleep that night. The next day, everything seemed the same, yet nothing felt right. Her friends noticed how distant she became. Her laughter faded. Her eyes carried shadows. She stopped walking through the coconut grove, the place where Jaya once confessed his love. But the shadow didn't stop following her. At first, it was small, a flicker in her peripheral vision, a footstep echoing after hers. But soon it grew bolder. She heard her name whispered from the well near the back of her house. The mirror in her bedroom would fog even when the air was dry, and one night, while brushing her hair, she saw strands fall to the floor, hair far longer and blacker than her own. A distant memory surfaced. Old village warnings about spirits that clung to broken promises, the kinds of entities summoned not by hate, but by desperation. Some nights, she would wake to see muddy footprints across the floor. Stopping inches from her bed, her mother thought it was just bad dreams, but Ningrum stopped telling anyone, because the last time she did, the shadow punished her. That night, her childhood friend, Sari, visited and joked about spirits and spells. She even teased Ningrum about Jaya, laughing, saying, "Maybe he cursed you with love." At midnight, Sari ran screaming into the street, her clothes soaked, her skin cold as ice. She claimed something had whispered through her teeth, filled her lungs, and forced her to see things, eyes staring from inside mirrors, hands crawling out from corners, a mouth pressed against the ceiling whispering Ningrum's name. The village healer called it a possession. Ningrum called it a warning. She thought of Jaya then, and for the first time, she wondered where he was. She hadn't seen him since the rejection, and that was when she realized what followed her wore his shape. She had tried to forget him. Jaya had disappeared after her rejection, and Ningrum told herself it was better that way. But now, each passing night made her question what truly left and what had returned in his place. The thing that haunted her didn't just look like Jaya, it moved like him, stood the way he used to when nervous, even tilted its head the same way he did when he tried to understand her silence, but its presence carried something hollow. Like a body remembering a soul it no longer had. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised colors, Ningrum returned from the river path. The wind had stilled. The coconut trees loomed tall and still, casting long shadows that stretched unnaturally far. That's when she saw it. Not far from the edge of the grove, it stood, watching, wearing his shape, not moving, not blinking, just waiting. She pretended not to notice, forced her steps to remain calm. but the weight of its gaze burned into her back until she reached the house. She slammed the door and locked every window. That night, a knock came, soft at first, then louder, then again, not at the door, but at the window facing the grove. She pulled the curtain. There he stood, Jaya, or something that wore his skin. Soaking wet, mud trailing down from his chin, his eyes black as coal. No whites left. He smiled too wide to still. She stepped back. He mouthed her name, but his lips didn't match the sound she heard. The voice came from behind her, inside her room, close to her ear. Ningrum screamed. The candles blew out when her parents rushed in. They found her in a corner, trembling, eyes fixed on the window. There was nothing there. After that, she refused to sleep alone, but it didn't matter. The thing no longer waited outside. It had found a way in, and it didn't need doors. It only needed her fear, and the thread tied from her heart to his. It wasn't the kind of connection that warmed. It bled. Every night, Ningrum felt it tighten an invisible tether pulling her into dreams that weren't hers. Visions of soil, damp and crawling, of a hut deep in the woods, of firelight dancing over a figure with hollow eyes, whispering her name. But worst of all, she began to feel Jaya's pain, not the heartbreak of rejection, but the agony of becoming something else, something not fully alive, yet not fully dead, bound to her. One morning, she awoke to scratch marks on her arms, deep, parallel lines as if clawed from within. Her nails were clean, her room was locked, but the mirror showed more than she could bear. Behind her reflection, standing just over her shoulder, was Jaya. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He simply watched. She turned around. Nothing. The mirror turned cold. Ningrum had reached her breaking point. She sought help not from friends or healers, but from someone the village only spoke of in whispers. The Jaya who once cleansed a cursed land, whose prayers silenced a crying grave. He listened without interruption as she recounted everything: her refusals, the haunting, the changing reflections, and the shadow bearing Jaya's face. The Jaya remained silent for a moment, then finally spoke. There are spirits born from longing, but yours is born from a ritual. He explained that forbidden rites could bind a soul to another not in love, but in obsession. What Jaya had done through the Dukan wasn't a plea, it was a transaction. He gave up his peace in exchange for a chance to stay close, but the ritual warped that wish. What returned wasn't just Jaya's spirit, it was the raw echo of his brokenness, laced with the dark will of the Shaman, a Penangu, a spirit formed not just to haunt, but to cling, to possess, and to never let go. The Jaya handed her a bundle of cloth wrapped in ashes and jasmine. You must return to the place it began, he said, where love died and the curse was born. The hut, Emba Rexo's place. She had to go back to the heart of the forest, where the shadows moved even in daylight, where Jaya's soul was traded away, and perhaps where it could still be saved. The forest was darker than she remembered, not because it was night, though the sky above was black and silent, but because something unnatural clung to the air. Ningrum stepped carefully, clutching the cloth bundle from the Jaya. The jasmine petals had wilted, the ashes had begun to stir, as if even they feared where she was going. The trees grew tighter together, the deeper she went. The moonlight now only a distant memory, but she could feel it just beyond the next turn. The clearing where Emba Rexo once lived, and where Jaya died. The hut was still there, though barely. Collapsed beams, a broken door, and carvings blackened by time and something older. The ground in front of it pulsed faintly, as if remembering blood spilled beneath. She stepped into the ruin. And the world changed. The air turned cold. The shadows moved, and from within the shattered hut, he emerged. Jaya, but not the boy she once knew. His face was pale, cracked like dry clay. His eyes were two pits of tar, glistening with a hunger not his own. The scent of wet soil and burnt incense filled the space between them. Still, he reached for her, His voice trembled. Ningrum, I waited. Tears welled in her eyes, not from love, but from sorrow. She saw now the price he had paid. His soul wasn't only cursed, it was chained, held together by every memory, every longing, and every shadow that followed her home. She opened the cloth bundle. The ashes turned warm. The jasmine ignited without flame. She began to chant soft at first, words taught by the Jaya, prayers older than the forest. Jaya's figure twisted. Smoke bled from his limbs. His mouth opened in a silent scream. Don't, he begged. Stay. But she continued. The hut began to collapse further. Wind tore through the grove. The trees shook violently. 1,000 voices screamed from the soil, but she stood firm. Then suddenly, silence. Jaya stood still, as if frozen in time. The shadows peeled away from his body, revealing the boy he once was. Soft eyes, a cracked smile. Ningrum, I'm sorry, he whispered. She stepped closer, gently touched his cheek. I know. And he faded like morning mist under sun. Gone. The ground stilled, the wind died, and the scent of jasmine returned. Calm and clean, she walked back under the pale dawn, barefoot and quiet, no longer followed by echoes. Love had been twisted into darkness, but in the end, Ningrum set him free.